What if I told you that Bahrain could change the fate of the 2025 championship? Not only because it's a demanding track, but because the four biggest teams arrive with more questions than answers. McLaren is floundering, Red Bull is experiencing an internal war, Ferrari is in crisis, and Mercedes could be on the verge of the silent coup no one sees coming. In this video, I'll bring you everything: technical updates, team tensions, and key predictions that could define the title battle. Stay until the end because the stakes are higher than you think. And tell me in the comments, which of these teams do you think will come out of Bahrain the hardest? Bahrain isn't just another race on the Formula One calendar. For the 2025 season, this circuit represents a fork in the road for many teams. The most curious thing is that this year it's no longer the championship opener, as it has been for the past 4 seasons. Ramadan forced the FIA to restructure the calendar order, moving Bahrain to the 4th round. This small change in dates may seem insignificant, but it completely changes the competitive landscape. Instead of racing in February with relatively milder temperatures and more stable conditions, teams will now face much warmer weather in April, which directly affects tire degradation, cooling, and how the car performs on long runs. The Bahrain International Circuit is 5.412 kilometers long and is a challenging mix of long straights, harsh braking, and medium and low traction corners, testing both the power and aerodynamic efficiency of the car. But most importantly, it's a track that demands impeccable rear tire wear management. Why is this crucial in 2025? Because the compounds chosen by Pirelli for this race are the softest in the range, further increasing the pressure on each team's engineers. It's no coincidence that race strategy in Bahrain becomes a lottery if you don't have a well-balanced car that keeps the tires at an optimal temperature range. And that's where the differences that could make the season begin. Bahrain is unforgiving. Historically, it has been a race where setup errors are costly, especially during night runs when the track temperature drops and the compounds react unpredictably. What makes this event unique is not only its technical layout, but also the brutal exposure it generates. An unbalanced car here cannot hide its weaknesses. And that makes this race a perfect thermometer to measure which teams have developed solid solutions and which were simply masking problems in the early races. This circuit, in short, is a mirror. It clearly reflects who has an adaptable technical concept and who is still blindly pursuing solutions. The teams arrive here with different urgencies. McLaren with the mission of confirming its leading status, Red Bull to resolve a car that has lost some of its dominance, Ferrari to redeem itself from one of the most embarrassing weekends in its recent history, and Mercedes in its role as a silent sniper, waiting for the giants to make a mistake before striking. But beyond the technical aspect, Bahrain is also an emotional test. The teams know that a poor performance here is not easy to hide. The gap in race pace is amplified, and the comparisons between teammates become brutal. Any strategic error, any mistake in the pits, or a tire that degrades a couple of laps ahead of schedule can be the difference between scoring important points or coming away empty-handed. In a championship expected to be tight right down to the final Grand Prix, Bahrain isn't just another race. It's a trap for the confident, a challenge for the ambitious, and a golden opportunity for those who dare to step forward when others hesitate. The question is, who will have the mettle to survive the desert and emerge from Bahrain with a clear message to the rest of the paddock? McLaren has begun the 2025 season as the team everyone wants to beat. After a spectacular finish in 2024 and a lightning-fast start this year with consecutive podium finishes in the first 3 rounds, the Woking-based team quickly established itself as the main contender for the title. Lando Norris in particular has shown a much more polished and mature version of himself, ready to go toe-to-toe with Verstappen and anyone else in front of him. But behind that facade of success lie worrying signs that could jeopardize his aspirations on a circuit like Bahrain. And as competitive as the MCL39 is in terms of downforce and efficiency on high-speed circuits, its Achilles heel remains evident: its performance in slow corners and sensitivity to changes in track temperature. Norris himself has made no bones about it. After the Japanese GP, he made it clear that low-speed corners, such as those found in Bahrain, are not favorable terrain for his car. In fact, his words were a wake-up call for the entire paddock. We are losing our strengths and touching our weaknesses. These weaknesses, on a circuit like this, can be magnified to the point of turning a winning weekend into a challenging one. Furthermore, there is a technical factor that further complicates the situation for McLaren. The FIA has issued a new technical directive regarding rear wing flex. This measure, which seeks to prevent the use of flexible components that alter aerodynamics on the straight line, has forced McLaren to stiffen its rear wing configuration. The result? A considerable loss of top speed. In Japan, this new limitation was already noticeable. Its usual advantage in qualifying and race pace on the straight line was drastically reduced. In Bahrain, where long straights are a critical component, this lack could further expose its weaknesses. In an attempt to balance the car, McLaren has decided to introduce a significant update to its floor. This is a second-spec version designed to generate more downforce without compromising straight-line efficiency. This update is key, but it also represents a risky gamble. If they fail to integrate it properly into the aerodynamic package, it could exacerbate their balance and tire wear issues. And Bahrain is not the ideal place to try new things without certainties, especially when all eyes are on you as the team to beat. The team's internal dynamics also need to be taken into account. While Lando Norris has established himself as the natural leader of the project, Oscar Piastri isn't too far behind. The Australian has shown impressive progress and, at times, has even been ahead in terms of pure pace. This internal competition can be positive, but in an environment as tense as Bahrain, where any mistake is costly, it can also become a source of additional pressure for both drivers. Team principal Andrea Stella has tried to maintain a balanced tone. He acknowledges the car's strong performance so far, but insists that the season is long and the margins are extremely tight. His statements ahead of the weekend in Bahrain are more cautious than optimistic. He knows that this circuit, where they already conducted pre-season testing, could show a completely different face in April. In this context, McLaren faces its first major test of the season. If they leave Bahrain with a good result, they will prove they are solid even in adverse conditions. But if the technical limitations become evident, their rivals will not only shave off points, they will also gain confidence. And in such a tight championship, that can be worth more than a simple victory. Because in Formula One, success is measured as much by how you win as by how you survive the difficult weekends. And Bahrain, for McLaren, promises to be one of the toughest of the year. Red Bull returned to the top of the podium in Japan thanks to a flawless performance from Max Verstappen, who continues to demonstrate why he is the most feared driver on the grid. However, behind that victory lies an increasingly fractured ecosystem within the Milton Keynes team. While on track, Max performs with the precision of a Swiss watch. Off the track, the team is being swept away by an internal storm that continues to intensify. And it all exploded just before Bahrain, one of the most sensitive stages of the calendar, both due to technical demands and media exposure. The root of the conflict lies in driver management. Red Bull has made the most controversial decision of the season so far, replacing Liam Lawson with Yuki Tsunoda in the second car seat, starting with the Japanese Grand Prix. Although the team has attempted to justify this move as a consensual strategy, the facts suggest otherwise. This decision has not only generated confusion in the paddock, but has also caused a visible rift between Verstappen and the team's management. Max disagrees with the handling of the case, and he has made this clear through his interactions on social media and his leaked statements. His annoyance is not only about Lawson's departure, but about what it represents: a repeated pattern of improvised decisions guided by external interests, particularly the influence of Honda. Yuki Tsunoda's presence is largely due to political and commercial pressure. Honda, in its final season as a power unit supplier to Red Bull before its definitive alliance with Aston Martin, reportedly pushed hard to place its Japanese driver in the main car. This imposition is not new, but the way it has been carried out, so hastily and without results to clearly support it this season, has irritated more than one person within the team, including its star driver. And this internal tension occurs just as the RB21 is going through a phase of technical vulnerability. While Verstappen took victory in Japan, his subsequent comments suggested that the car still has structural weaknesses, particularly in tire management and slow corner stability. In Bahrain, a circuit where both aspects are crucial, these limitations could be exposed. Verstappen even mentioned that they still need to work hard to push the car to the limit, a phrase that in his case isn't rhetorical, it's a warning. But beyond the technical aspects, what's truly worrying is the tense atmosphere inside the pit box. The RB21 is a car developed around Verstappen's style, with an extremely reactive front end and a nervous rear end, making it difficult to drive for any other driver who doesn't have the same sensitivity. This explains why neither Perez nor Ricciardo, nor now Lawson have been able to shine in that second seat. And now, Tsunoda inherits a car that demands a level of surgical precision and total confidence in the front end. The risk is high. If he fails, not only will he damage his own image, but he will reinforce the perception that no one at Red Bull can perform except Verstappen. And that, in a structure that seeks to dominate the Constructors' Championship, is unsustainable. The question is whether Red Bull can maintain its hegemony amid this turbulence. Because winning a race like Japan, where the layout favors its aerodynamic package, is not the same as surviving a circuit like Bahrain, where technical weaknesses are amplified and the team's internal harmony is tested every second. And if the relationship between Verstappen and the team's management continues to deteriorate, what today seems like just a rift could become an irreversible fracture. Bahrain could be the stage where Red Bull confirms its resilience, or reveals that its golden era is beginning to crumble from within. Because in modern Formula One, it's not enough to have the fastest car. You also need an aligned team, a cohesive project, and the ability to manage ego and politics in one of the most complex sports on the planet. And today, Red Bull has speed, but it has lost stability. And that, in such a tight championship, can cost much more than a race. Ferrari entered the 2025 season with a narrative filled with hope. The addition of Lewis Hamilton to Formula One's most legendary team ignited hope not only in Maranello, but among all fans who dream of seeing the Scuderia back at the top. And during the first part of the Chinese Grand Prix, everything seemed to point in that direction. Hamilton took pole position in the sprint qualifying, a solid win in that same short race, and an on-track synergy with Leclerc that suggested Ferrari finally had two drivers capable of scoring strong points every weekend. But what happened next turned that dream into a nightmare, and in record time. Hours after the end of the main race, the FIA announced the disqualification of both cars. Charles Leclerc's car was found to be under the minimum permitted weight, while Hamilton's SF25 was penalized for excessive wear on the bottom plank, the thickness of which did not comply with regulations. At first glance, these errors seemed like simple technical glitches, but what has emerged since reveals a much deeper problem. Ferrari didn't fail because of a small slip, it failed at the very basics. And that's what's truly alarming. In Hamilton's case, subsequent analysis revealed that Ferrari never completed a race simulation in dry conditions during pre-season, specifically with their car. A breakdown in Bahrain prevented them from obtaining crucial data on the car's behavior on long runs. This is no small anecdote. It's a fundamental lack of information that later led to flawed decisions about car setup, particularly regarding ride height and floorboard wear. The consequence was direct. Wear was such that post-race measurements showed figures below the regulatory minimum. A penalty was automatically inevitable. And in Leclerc's case, the car's weight dropped to 799 kilos, 1 kilo below the minimum allowed, after replacing the damaged front wing during the race. There was no discussion here either. The infraction was clear, but the error lay in the planning. The extra weight added by the new wing was not properly compensated. In Formula One, such omissions cannot exist in a team aiming to fight for championships. The reaction of Fred Vasseur, the team principal, was a mix of frustration and contained anger. In subsequent statements, he took aim directly at FOM, accusing it of manipulating the media narrative by broadcasting only part of the radio interview between Hamilton and the team during the race. The message that went viral showed a defiant Lewis, apparently ignoring a team order. But what was not shown, and which Ferrari later confirmed, was that the British driver himself had previously suggested letting Leclerc pass because he was struggling with grip. That omission sparked a media firestorm that further tarnished Ferrari's image, already battered by technical disqualifications. But beyond the narrative, the root of the problem is structural. Ferrari continues to stumble upon the same errors that have plagued it for more than a decade. Poor management, a lack of operational rigor, and ill-founded technical decisions. Hamilton's arrival promised a new standard, a different level of demand, a winning mentality. But if the team isn't up to scratch in terms of procedures, data, and execution, not even a 7-time world champion can save them. And now, Bahrain arrives at the worst possible time. Not only because the media pressure is overwhelming, but because the secure circuit demands perfection in areas where Ferrari has shown weaknesses. Traction stability, rear tire temperature management, and real-time strategic decisions will be key. And all of this must occur under the scrutiny of the FIA, rivals, and a fan base that can no longer tolerate excuses. The biggest challenge for Ferrari isn't recovering points. It's regaining credibility. Because in 2025, it's not enough to have a competitive car on Saturdays or win a sprint. It requires consistency, precision, and leadership. And what's at stake is no longer just the championship. It's the future of the most ambitious project in modern F1. And that future, for better or worse, begins to be defined this weekend in Bahrain. While the media spotlight focuses on Red Bull's recovery, Ferrari's disqualifications, and McLaren's meteoric rise, Mercedes has adopted a stance that might seem passive, but in reality embodies a meticulously calculated approach. The German team, 8-time World Constructors Champion, knows exactly how to move when the spotlight isn't on them. At the start of this season, far from making noise, they have worked in the shadows, fine-tuning details, correcting mistakes, and remaining in the conversation without being the center of attention. But in Formula One, silence is rarely a coincidence. After a 2024 season plagued by inconsistencies, Mercedes began this season with moderate expectations, aware that the new W15 still had much room for improvement. And the most interesting thing is that, without boasting about major improvements or promising revolutions, the results have begun to show a clear trend: consistency. George Russell has been the more consistent of the two drivers, getting the most out of the car every weekend and establishing himself as a technical force within the team. His ability to read the race and adapt to the changing behavior of the car has been key to keeping Mercedes consistently within the top 5. But attention inevitably also falls on Lewis Hamilton. The 7-time world champion is going through a difficult period in his first year with Ferrari, having already suffered a technical disqualification and been the target of media controversy. And although there are no official intentions to return to Mercedes early, speculation in the paddock is beginning to swirl about alternative scenarios if the Scuderia's mistakes persist. In this context, the simple fact that Mercedes maintains a close relationship with Hamilton, and that they still have Valtteri Bottas as a reserve driver, fuels theories of a possible future reunion, although for now, everything remains in the realm of speculation. Technically, Mercedes has taken firm but cautious steps. The team has recently introduced improvements to the W15's floor and rear suspension, crucial elements for improving traction in slow and medium-speed corners, a vital aspect for a circuit like Bahrain, where the exit from tight corners can determine overtaking opportunities and race pace management. Furthermore, the new aerodynamic package is designed to generate downforce more efficiently, essential on a track where the balance between straight-line speed and cornering is particularly delicate. The most interesting aspect of this phase of Mercedes' development is its methodological approach. Unlike other teams that rely on major evolutionary leaps, the Brackley-based team has opted for cumulative progression, trusting that small, consistent improvements build a more solid foundation than a single major change. And it is precisely on these types of circuits, where extreme conditions push car design to its limits, that this philosophy can bear fruit. Because in Bahrain, the fastest car over a single lap doesn't necessarily win. The team with the most consistent race pace, the best tire management, and the one that makes the fewest strategic errors wins. Furthermore, the team has fine-tuned its pit operations, an area where they had lost ground to Red Bull and McLaren in recent seasons. In the first 3 Grands Prix, Mercedes has recorded high-level, quick, and error-free pit stops, demonstrating that the work behind the scenes is beginning to yield visible results. And if they can maintain that operational consistency while others stumble with technical errors and erratic decisions, it wouldn't be unreasonable to see them climb positions in both championships. Mercedes' true strength right now isn't spectacularity but solidity. In a championship as volatile as the 2025 championship, where mistakes are paid for with resounding crashes and unpredictable weekends are the norm, the team that remains consistent and avoids chaos will go the furthest. And Mercedes, with its apparent discretion, seems to be building exactly that, a wall of reliability and strategy that could prove decisive when the most critical moments of the year arrive. Bahrain could be the first visible sign that this silent master plan is working. And if the other teams don't pay attention, they could discover too late that Mercedes, quietly, is already in attack position. Because in modern Formula One, sometimes the most dangerous roar is the one that isn't heard until it's unavoidable. Bahrain 2025 isn't just another stop on the Formula One calendar. It's a true test of character for the teams, drivers, and technical structures seeking to build their path to the title. At this stage of the championship, there's no longer room for excuses or margin for basic errors. What's decided this weekend can have lasting effects, both on points and on team morale. And that's precisely why the Bahrain GP takes on a much deeper strategic dimension than what's perceived on the surface. We've seen how McLaren, despite its impressive start, now faces its first major technical and contextual challenge. The MCL39's strengths may not be enough on a circuit that punishes its weaknesses, and the pressure to maintain the lead could become overwhelming if they fail to adapt quickly. What they do in Bahrain will determine whether they are looking at a legitimate title contender or whether their dominance was simply a momentary illusion. Red Bull, for its part, arrives at a critical crossroads. The victory in Japan has been overshadowed by internal decisions that have generated discontent within the team itself. The tension between management and Verstappen, the forced moves pushed by Honda, and the lack of confidence in the RB21 as a balanced machine for both drivers exposed the team to an identity crisis. Bahrain will be an opportunity to steady the ship or to confirm that the era of absolute control they enjoyed is beginning to crumble from within. Ferrari, caught up in the most media and technically charged storm of the year, has a clear mission: to rebuild its credibility. What happened in China was not a simple setback. It was a sign of structural weakness that could be costly if not corrected immediately. Bahrain is unforgiving. And if the Scuderia stumbles again on the fundamentals of the regulations, neither Hamilton nor Leclerc will be able to salvage what would be another wasted year for a team that has had all the tools but still hasn't found its way. And Mercedes, amid the noise of the others, continues to advance silently. With a patient strategy, a car that progressively evolves, and increasingly refined operational execution, the German team may be preparing a silent attack on the championship. They don't need grand declarations, they just need to stay close, until the mistakes of others leave the way clear. Bahrain may be the exact point where that patience begins to transform into visible results. This Grand Prix, in essence, represents a fork in the season's narrative. For some, it will be the confirmation of their ambitions, for others the beginning of a downward spiral. And it is precisely in these kinds of scenarios that the real contenders separate themselves from those who were just taking advantage of a good moment. Speed won't be enough here. Structure, strategy, cohesion, and, above all, resilience are needed. The 2025 Formula One is defined by its unpredictability, and Bahrain will be a raw and honest showcase of who is truly ready to fight to the end. Will McLaren be able to withstand the pressure? Will Red Bull regain control of its destiny? Will Ferrari emerge from the collapse, or will its crisis deepen? And what role will Mercedes play in this quiet but dangerous comeback? Leave your opinion in the comments. Your opinion is crucial. And if this analysis gave you something different, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a thing. Because in the next video we're going to enter even more delicate territory, the real reasons behind the decisions that are destabilizing the paddock, and how they could affect the futures of several drivers before the first half of the championship is over. What's coming is just beginning.